Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition, and this week it comes from Jordan Blackwell, who covers Leicester City for Leicestershire Live, familiar face on the podcast. A reminder as well that this episode is brought to you by NordVPN, so do click the link in your podcast description box to get an exclusive offer on your NordVPN plan. Jordan, welcome back to the podcast. How are you keeping?
Not so bad, thanks, Andrew. How are you?
Yes, I'm all right. I was just saying to you off camera because you asked about the cup final and the cup win and how I was feeling. I'm just ready for a week off. I would like to have a lie down for a few days and catch up on some sleep because it feels like I've run a marathon. We've been that busy, but I wouldn't have changed it for the world. But yeah, I'm not doing too bad at all. Newcastle's fortunes, everything's going rather rosy. Leicester City, Jordan, not so much. I didn't actually realise until I looked at the league table and Leicester's position, just how far off safety Leicester are.
Yeah, it's really become a discussion about preparing for next season now. I think there was the weekend before the international break where Wolves beat Southampton on the Saturday, and then Leicester lost to Manchester United on the Sunday, and the gap moved from 6 points to 9 points. That was then really for a lot of people the kind of the decisive moment, and that it then felt a sort of an insurmountable gap. Obviously, it's since moved to 12 points. I think that a lot of the focus now is on sort of getting ready for next season, but also maybe getting relegated with a little bit more dignity than they are doing so at the moment.
Yeah, that's a tough job for Ruud van Nistelrooy. I mean, what is his message to the players and to the fans? Because as you've said there, a lot of people have already accepted their fate. You know, is it, if you want to play for this club next season, use the next 8 games to show why you should be here? Is it like you say, let's go down with a bit of fight and a bit of pride? And to be fair, that's what's been missing, hasn't it, since he's come in? So it's all right to be saying that, but I don't think he's going to find it.
Yeah, there was he's been speaking about personal pride quite a lot. I think he's been saying that was a big thing for him, and that's what's sort of making him get up each day and go again, because I think he's probably in quite a unique situation as a manager, where he's been allowed to oversee such a poor run. And normally, after 14 defeats in 15 matches, you do lose your job, and I think he's probably aware of that. But I think he wants the players to kind of feel that as well, and to feel that personal pride that he is. He talks about standards a lot, and I think he does want to drive those. But I think most fans would say they're not really seeing it in the performances. It feels that, particularly the Manchester City game on Wednesday night, it felt a little bit like they were happy to kind of lose 2-0 and just avoid the embarrassment of anything more serious, and kind of hope that the infamy, if you like, of such a terrible run kind of gets, is kind of lost, kind of thing. That I think they would rather not have a go and just keep not scoring in games than potentially lose 4 or 5-0. They're on this run now where they've not scored a goal in 7 games. And it's just, they're not giving, at the minute, they're not giving fans any reason to turn up to games. It's been that poor.
Yeah, just to read a few of those stats. I mean, lost 9 of the last 10, lost 6 of the last 6, scoring none and conceding 14. I mean, those are scary numbers. And the visitors to the King Power on Monday are Newcastle United, who are on a high, winning the cup, beat Brentford despite not being at their best. It must be a daunting task that Ruud van Nistelrooy knows he's facing on Monday against Newcastle.
Yeah, I think who's very he was full of praise for Newcastle, and particularly Isak as well. I suppose so probably as a striker, you're looking at the players that used to play in the position that you used to play in. And he was very kind about Newcastle. I think he's been aware that this run that Leicester are on in terms of their fixtures would be a difficult one. I think before the Man City game, he spoke about almost the way he was teeing it up was that after this run of 4 games, so Leicester just played Man City, then they've got Newcastle, then they've got Brighton and Liverpool after that. It was almost as if this would be the run that decides the fate, and it was almost like he was suggesting that we've got the one of the toughest possible runs of 4 matches you could have. So yeah, I think he's aware that it's a difficult challenge, and I can't really see anything changing that much based on how he's approached the past few games and how Leicester play this game. I think it will again be the same at almost trying to avoid an embarrassing scoreline. That is the point that they're at, it seems, in the way that they're playing.
When Newcastle United fans listen to this, will be able to relate to maybe how some Leicester fans are feeling, because it wasn't too long ago that they were in the same position, watching their club, especially under former managers, going and maybe looking for a defeat where it's 2 or 1-0 rather than 5 or 6. So we can definitely understand how the fans are feeling down in Leicester. Talk to us then, aside from that kind of approach about not getting embarrassed, how do Leicester approach the game on Monday in terms of having the ball, not having the ball, sitting back, absorbing? What are we expecting?
Well, they'll be sitting back. They've changed formation over the last 3 games. And actually, it's interesting. Van Nistelrooy hadn't kept the same 11 at any point during his first few months. Since he's changed formation, he's kept the same 11 every game. So it's been a back 5 with obviously a central defensive 3 and wing backs, but they're very they're wing backs that are probably part of a back 5 rather than sort of bombing on. And then they've got 2 physical midfielders in Ndidi and Samare sitting in front. And then really it's just a front 3 of El Khanous behind the 2 strikers, Daka and Vardy. And I would say defensively, they probably have been slightly better. Obviously, they've not kept a clean sheet in, I think it's 26 games in all competitions now. It goes back to early October. But broadly, they are conceding fewer chances. Certainly they did, not necessarily against Man City, but they did against Chelsea and Manchester United. I know United scored 3, but I think they might have only had 3 or 4 shots on target. But it's just that kind of approach and that system, while it may make things more difficult for the opposition, they don't really have any way to build the game up. They play it wide to the wing backs, but they're not really wing backs that go forwards. They're not really wing backs that can beat a man, so they inevitably end up coming backwards. The midfield duo, one of them's Ndidi, and his game is very much based on, even though he's probably been a little bit more attacking over the past couple of years, certainly last season under Maresca in the Championship. His game is still very much based on, being defensive and protecting the defence. Samare doesn't get on the ball as much as you would like, so there's no real way of them connecting the midfield and defence with the 3 attackers. And also the attackers that they've got, other than El Khanous, Daka and Vardy really want to be chasing balls and not dropping in to receive it. And they've been having to do a little bit of that, and it's just not been working out. So in terms of how they play on the attack, it's really difficult to say, because we've really not seen anything in the last 3 games. They had, I think it officially went down as 2 shots against Manchester City, and one of those I wouldn't have said was a shot. So there really, there really wasn't anything to shout about going forward. So yeah, because of the defensive aspect, they won't be. I can't imagine they'll be keeping the ball that much. So I imagine Newcastle will have a reasonable amount off it, and that Leicester will sort of test Newcastle and ask them to try to break down this back 5.
I think that's something Newcastle's still getting used to, being that kind of dominating side when it comes to possession. We saw against Brentford, there were stages of the game where they had a lot of possession, and I don't think they quite knew what they were doing with it. A few stray passes here or there, and hopefully as time goes on, they will feel a bit more confident having to have more possession, and tests like Monday will only aid that. I'm just looking at some stats here, Jordan. Leicester have lost each of the last 7 home Premier League matches, failing to score in every single game In the English top flight history, the only side to go 8 home games in a row without a goal were Manchester City between January and May 07, who drew 2 and lost 6 of those games. So, and that is, again, quite the stat. What will the atmosphere be like on Monday at the King Power? I mean, does Ruud van Nistelrooy have the backing of the fans?
Not now, no, I don't believe so. I think there was probably a period where during the first, would you believe they're on their second run of 7 defeats in a row under Van Nistelrooy? During the first of those, I would have said that he probably did have an element of backing, because I think in some of the performances they were a little bit unfortunate. They lost 2-0 to Man City at home at the end of December. I think it was the last game of 2024, and they were the better team, and they actually played really, really well that day, and they deserved something more out of the game. And there was a few games like that around that period, and also he wasn't being backed in the January transfer window, and I think it felt, the kind of anger of the fans was more focused on the director of football and the board, and the running of the club, rather than Van Nistelrooy. It was almost like there was a little bit of sympathy for Van Nistelrooy for the situation he'd been placed in. I think this second run of 7 defeats, since they beat Tottenham at the end of January, they've lost the 7 games since and not scored in any of them. I think that is where the fans have turned against Van Nistelrooy. I don't think there's much support for him there anymore, because it's understandable, really, because I think even there is an understanding of the situation that Leicester are in. For some fans, the kind of the relegation has been accepted for a long time, but you still expect more than what they're currently showing. So I can't imagine the atmosphere will be great. I think we're probably at risk of probably not everybody being there. I think Leicester have, over the past few seasons, really, well, probably the past 10 years, they have pretty much sold out the stadium every week. But I think, there's probably, probably some season ticket holders that might think, oh, it's a night game, it's on the telly anyway, I'm just not going to bother with this one. There's not much, as I said, they're really not giving fans any reason to actually turn up to games, because there's nothing about their performance that is in any way exciting. So yes, I think if Newcastle fans make some noise, they'll be picked up on the telly rather than the Leicester fans.
And so, given your answer there, I'm assuming he's not going to be the man to take Leicester City into next season, because sometimes when teams go down from the Premier League, they stick with the managers, and it makes it a lot easier to plan, because you know who's going to be in charge. And as you say, when you're looking ahead to the next campaign, these decisions can be started to be made now. But if Ruud van Nistelrooy is not going to be in charge next season, that probably doesn't help the future planning for Leicester.
Yeah, and actually Van Nistelrooy said that yesterday at his press conference. He said that I think he said that the decision was needed yesterday on who was going to lead the club into next season, and I think he was looking for kind of the word he kept using was alignment with the club. It seemed to be suggesting to me he wanted assurances, financially, as to what they would be able to provide in the summer leading into next season. He wanted to know that the club saw him as the man to take the club forward, because obviously if they do see him as that, then he can plan a little bit more for next season now, and he can he's been a bit reluctant to bring in young players, but Leicester have a couple of very, very good teenagers who have very high ceilings. Maybe it's a chance to get them 20 minutes here or there and not play players that might leave in the summer, and start to think about next season a little bit more. But I think, they're getting to this point now where I would say that it's been so poor over the last few weeks that if Van Nistelrooy comes back in as manager in the summer, does it feel like there's a little bit of a hangover from last season? It doesn't. Do you need it to feel like a fresh start? When Leicester were relegated a couple of years ago, they brought in Maresca, and a completely different way of playing. very different style of manager to what they'd had previously, and that made it feel fresh. And obviously, they got the rewards for that by winning the championship. I think that's probably what they might miss unless results pick up over the next over the final 8 games. They're going to be going into the summer in such a poor state and such a poor run of form that if the same manager then comes back to lead them into next season, for the players that are still there, I don't know if you kind of feel a little bit down in the dumps still, because you're thinking to the form of last season and you're not thinking about the positivity of something new and something fresh. So that's the decision that the club have got to make. And I think, to be honest, it seems Van Nistelrooy is urging them to make it because he wants clarity as well.
One to watch. And I guess if you know you're in charge next season, it might be a little bit easier to get that message about fight across as well, because you can say you want to be a key part of my plans for next season, short in the last 8 games. But if no one knows what the future holds, then no wonder performances and results aren't going Leicester's way. In terms of Newcastle United, Jordan, you mentioned Alexander Isak there. Eddie Howe's held his press conference on Friday, and he's going to take a little closer look at Isak, who left the pitch against Brentford midway through the game. Turned out that he'd actually picked a groin injury up in the pre-match warm-up, managed to play part of the game, scored his 20th Premier League goal of the season, but will be assessed before Monday's game. But for the purposes of this question, let's say he is going to be available and he is going to start. Is he the man that you fear the most?
I would do so, because I think that even with he's just a very good striker. I mean, for me, I would say he's probably as good as Haaland. And probably, the best sort of out and out striker in the league. I think they're on a par for me. I know probably Haaland is probably the slightly better goal getter, but I think Isak does give you a little bit more sort of in the all round play. And I just think the fact that Leicester will play a back 5, I think from what I've seen of Isak, he's good enough to deal with that, finding space or whatever, and and making sure he's involved in the game. He's not going to get crowded out. I mean, you'll know better than me, but I feel like every time I've watched him, no matter which defence he's played against, he does manage to get himself in the game. He's never has anonymous games that a lot of strikers seem to do. I mean, Vardy's probably the prime example of that, but he's quite good at being anonymous and then popping up with the goal. So he would be the threat. I do think fans will give a good reception to Harvey Barnes if he starts or plays any part of the game, and I think he will be. I think he will be keen to impress, but I do feel like, based on my memory of Barnes, I feel like Leicester will probably be sitting so deep that the kind of the space to run into in behind that he thrives on probably won't be quite there so much. I mean, to be honest, I would say at this point Newcastle are just a very, very good all-round team. You don't get to the heights consistently that they've been over the past couple of seasons, and challenging for trophies, winning trophies, without being a good team. So I think that's really the main issue that Leicester have, is that they're facing a very good side that has players who know what they're doing, and quality players at that.
Well, all that remains to be done then, Jordan, is to get your score prediction for Monday. How is it going to go?
I will say 2-0 to Newcastle. I don't think Leicester's scoreless run will end, and I don't think their losing streak will end. I don't know how many people you have on here who predict their own team to lose, but it would really be silly of me not to predict Leicester losing. So I'll say 2-0 to Newcastle.
Well, we'll take that. We do have some people who are honest with their score predictions, but many, if they do predict a defeat, do it through gritted teeth. But we'll definitely take a 2-0 victory down at the King Power, because that would be a massive boost for Newcastle United's Champions League qualification hopes for next season. Jordan, thank you very much for popping on to the podcast. Always a pleasure to chat to you. To you guys watching and listening, you know what to do by now. Hit thumbs up, hit subscribe, get into the comments on YouTube. If you're on the audio-only channel, please leave us a rating and review. Make sure you take advantage of that exclusive offer for your NordVPN plan as well. The link is in the podcast description box. And for myself, I will see you guys very soon.